Think about it. You plan every detail, push yourself to the limit, control what you can and can't. You wake up with your mind already racing, thinking about what you need to do, and go to sleep with it still racing, going over what you didn't get done. And in the midst of it all, you feel that the more you try, the more things seem to slip through your fingers. That relationship you tried so hard to hold on to, it fell apart. That professional goal you pursued with obsession, it remains one step away always. And you never rest, because stopping seems like giving up, and giving up seems like failing. But there is a secret that ancient philosophers discovered millennia ago and that modern life has made sure you forget. Absolute control is an illusion. And worse than that, it is a prison that you yourself have built brick by brick with your own hands. Because the truth is that you were trained for this. Since childhood, you were taught that effort is synonymous with results, that control is synonymous with competence, that whoever lets go of the reins loses the horse. You were told that life is an equation. If you do X, you will get Y. If you plan enough, nothing will go wrong. If you watch every move, nothing will escape. Except that life is not an equation, and the control that you were promised would be the key to everything has actually become the chain that binds you to exhaustion, anxiety, and the permanent feeling that you have never done enough. You have become a hostage to your own need for certainty. And certainty, my friend, is the most expensive luxury there is because it costs you your peace of mind. The question is not whether you should try less hard. The question is, are you trying in the right way? Or are you waging war against the very nature of reality and losing? Because there is a different way of acting in the world, a way that the ancient sages knew, that the Eastern masters practiced, and that modern science is beginning to prove, a way where you act with strength but without tension, where you pursue but without despair, where you conquer but without losing yourself along the way. Let's start with the obvious, but what no one tells you, control has become an addiction, and like all addictions, it promises to relieve pain but only increases it. You know what I'm talking about. It's that feeling that if you take your eyes off the ball for a second, everything will fall apart. It's rereading your email 10 times before sending it, checking that you locked the door 3 times before leaving, mentally rehearsing a difficult conversation until you've memorized every comma. It's feeling that relaxing is dangerous, that trusting is naive, that letting go is losing. And the worst part, you don't even realize you're doing it anymore. Control is no longer a tool. It has become who you are. It has become the way you relate to the world, to others, to yourself. You're not just trying to control things. You're trying to control your very existence, as if life were a project that needs to be managed, reviewed, optimized. But the truth is that this didn't come from you. It was planted. Modern society sold you the idea that you are solely responsible for everything that happens in your life. Did it work? Credit to you? Did it go wrong? It's your fault. You were told that you are the CEO of your own life, the architect of your own destiny, the captain of your own ship. And that sounds inspiring, until you realize that it means you are alone at the helm, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no time off, no rest, no permission to fail. The problem is that this is not empowerment. It's exhaustion disguised as responsibility. Because let's face it, there's a huge difference between acting with purpose and trying to control every outcome. The first gives you direction. The second paralyzes you. When you act with purpose, you plant the seed and trust the process. When you try to control, you dig up the soil every day to see if the seed has sprouted and end up killing the plant. And this happens in everything. In relationships, when you try to force someone to love you the way you need them to. In your career, when you demand results that depend on 1,000 variables beyond your control. In your health, when you turn self-care into self-demand. You become a general trying to command an army that doesn't exist, fighting battles that were never yours to win. Now think with me. How many times have you felt that tension in your chest, that feeling of permanent urgency, as if something terrible were about to happen if you didn't act now? How many nights have you spent awake, going over what you said, what you did, what you failed to do? How many times have you cancelled the present moment because you were too busy trying to secure the future? There's a name for this. Hypervigilance. It's the mental state of someone who lives as if they were always in danger, always on alert, always ready for the next disaster. And the irony is that the more you try to protect yourself by controlling everything, the more vulnerable you become, because you spend all your energy fighting ghosts, and when something real happens, you're already exhausted. There's a scene that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine someone holding a handful of sand in their hand. The tighter that person squeezes their fingers, trying not to lose a single grain, the more sand slips through the cracks. But if they relax their hand, leave their palm open, the sand stays there, resting. Not because it's being held, but because there's no reason for it to leave. That's exactly how it works with everything in your life. The tighter you grip, the more slips away. Relationships suffocated by jealousy and constant vigilance. Opportunities lost because you were too busy planning the next step. Moments of joy wasted because your mind was already on the next worry. Control has robbed you of something precious, the ability to be present, because you can't be here now while your mind is busy trying to predict, plan, secure, avoid. You live in the what if I fail, what if I lose, what if I'm not enough? And while you're in this endless loop, life is happening, and you're watching from the outside through the window of your own anxiety. But here's the twist. Control is not strength. It never has been. Control is fear disguised as strategy. It's a desperate attempt to avoid suffering, to eliminate uncertainty, to ensure that nothing bad will happen. But do you know what happens when you live like this? You don't avoid suffering. You just exchange real momentary suffering for chronic permanent suffering, the anguish of never being able to rest. And there's more. Control drives people away, because no one can stand living with someone who wants to manage every detail, who turns spontaneity into a schedule, who responds to let's see how it goes with a 5-page action plan. People don't want to be controlled. They want to be seen, accepted, loved, with their imperfections, their unpredictability, their freedom to be who they are. So maybe the question isn't how can I control better? Maybe the question is, why do I need to control so much? And more importantly, who told me I'm responsible for everything? Because deep down you know you're not. You know that rain will fall regardless of your plans, that people will react in their own way regardless of your script, that life will surprise you, for better or for worse, even if you've mapped out every step. You know that. But still, you can't let go. And the reason is simpler and more painful than it seems. You believe that if you let go, you'll lose everything, because control has become the only thing between you and chaos. And the idea of letting go seems in your mind the same as surrendering to disaster. But what if I told you that this belief, this certainty that you need to hold everything in your own hands, is exactly what is preventing you from having what you want? What if the problem is not a lack of control but an excess of it? Because here's the truth that no one has told you. You can't control everything. And it's not because you're weak, incapable, or unprepared. It's because most things are simply not in your hands. They never have been. They never will be. The Stoics knew this more than 2,000 years ago. Epictetus, a philosopher who spent half his life as a slave, said something that should be tattooed on the forehead of anyone who lives anxiously. There are things that depend on us and things that don't. And wisdom lies in knowing the difference. Sounds simple, right? But think about the last time you got angry in traffic. You banged on the steering wheel, cursed the car in front of you, felt the pressure rise, as if your anger could magically make the cars go faster. It can't. It never could. Traffic is not within your control, but your reaction, that is. Or think about that message you sent and waited hours for a reply. You checked your phone 50 times, imagined 1,000 scenarios, created an entire soap opera in your head about what the person was thinking. But the answer was not up to you. The time it takes for the person to reply, their mood, their priorities. None of that is in your hands. But how much will you wear yourself down waiting? That is in your hands. And that's where the problem lies. We spend energy, time, and mental health trying to control the uncontrollable. And when things don't turn out the way we want them to, because obviously they won't, we feel frustrated, betrayed, powerless, as if the universe had failed us. But the universe owes you nothing. It didn't sign a contract. It didn't promise that if you tried hard enough, everything would work out the way you imagined. Epictetus divided life into two very clear boxes: what is within your control and what is not. And do you know what he put in the first box? Very little. Your actions, your choices, your reactions, your thoughts, your efforts, basically your internal conduct. That's it. Now the second box, everything else. The behavior of others, the past, the future, other people's opinions, the final outcome of things, the economy, the weather, health, death, absolutely everything that does not depend exclusively on you. And the trick, the secret that can change your life, is to learn to invest in the first box and accept the second. Because when you try to control what is beyond your reach, you are literally fighting reality. And guess who always wins that fight? Reality. But hey, accepting is not giving up. It's not folding your arms and saying whatever. Acceptance is recognizing what is without useless resistance so that you can direct your energy where it really matters. It's the difference between swimming against the current until you drown and swimming diagonally, using the force of the water to your advantage. Because think about it. Can you control whether it will rain on your wedding day? No. But can you control whether you will have a plan B? Yes. Can you control whether you let the rain ruin your day or whether you dance in the rain? Yes. Can you control whether you'll remember it as a funny story or a tragedy? Yes. The same logic applies to everything. You can't control whether you'll get promoted, but you can control whether you'll do your best work. You can't control whether someone will love you back, but you can control whether you'll love honestly and courageously. You can't control how long you'll live, but you can control how you'll live that time. And when you understand that, truly, not just intellectually, something changes. The pressure eases, the anxiety loosens, because you stop carrying the weight of the whole world on your shoulders and start carrying only what is yours. And believe me, what is yours is already heavy enough. But here's the painful part. We don't want to accept that. We want to believe that if we plan right, if we try hard enough, if we are good enough, we can guarantee the outcome. Because accepting that we don't control everything is accepting that we are vulnerable. And vulnerability is scary. Vulnerability brings us face to face with our humanity, with the fact that we are small in the face of greater forces, that we can do everything right and still lose, that we can love with all our hearts and not be loved in return, that we can work hard and not be recognized, that we can take care of our health and still get sick. That hurts, that scares us, and that's why we prefer the illusion of control. So we prefer to live in fantasy. We prefer to kill ourselves with work, worry, and control because at least that way we feel like we're doing something. At least that way we don't have to face the truth, that life is uncertain, that the future is foggy, and that in the end, we don't have as much power as we would like. But do you know what happens when you finally accept that? When you finally let go of what isn't yours to hold on to? You don't fall apart. You breathe. For the first time in a long time, you take a deep breath without that weight on your chest, without that constant tension. Because you stop fighting windmills and start using your energy where it can really make a difference, on yourself. Because control doesn't protect you, it imprisons you. It keeps you stuck in a cycle of anticipation and anxiety, where you're never really living, just preparing to live. And freedom, true freedom, only comes when you understand that you never needed to hold on to everything. You just needed to hold on to yourself, your choices, your values, your integrity. The rest was always out of your hands. And it always will be. And that's okay. So let me tell you something that will sound strange at first, but may be the most important thing you hear today. The more you chase something, the further away you get from it. I know, it seems like the opposite of everything you've been taught. It seems to contradict all that stuff about chasing your dreams, never giving up. Where there's a will, there's a way. But stay with me here. There's a philosopher named Alan Watts who talked about this in a brilliant way. He called it the reverse law, or the law in reverse. The idea is that in many areas of life, excessive effort, obsessive pursuit, desperate desire for something actually creates the opposite effect. You push away exactly what you want. Think of a small child trying to catch a reflection of light on the wall. She runs after it, stretches out her little arms, tries to grab that bright circle. But the faster she runs, the more the reflection dances across the wall, always one step ahead. The child doesn't understand that it's not the reflection that's running away. It's the child who is creating the chase. If they stopped, if they simply observed, the reflection would remain there, calm, going nowhere. Now replace the child with yourself, and the reflection with happiness, or love, or peace, or success. See how it works? Because the truth is that there are things in life that you can't achieve by chasing them. You can only attract them by leaving space for them to arrive. And that goes against everything the go-get-it culture has taught you. It goes against the idea that you need to fight, force, battle for every inch. But that's exactly where the trick lies. Let me give you a very concrete example. Insomnia. Have you ever tried to force yourself to sleep? You lie down, close your eyes, and tell yourself, now I'm going to sleep. The more you try, the more you focus on sleeping, the more awake you become. Because sleep doesn't come when you command it. It comes when you relax, when you stop trying, when you let go. Or think about that moment when you're trying to remember someone's name or a word or a place. You strain your memory. You search every corner of your mind. You become obsessed with trying to remember, and nothing. But when you finally give up, when you stop trying and go do something else, bam, the memory comes back, all on its own, effortlessly. Or relationships. Have you ever seen someone who desperately wants to be loved, who does everything, who molds themselves, who begs for attention? The more that person chases after it, the more people pull away. Because desperation repels. Neediness drives people away. But when you're comfortable with yourself, when you don't need anyone else to feel complete, that's when people naturally gravitate toward you. And this happens with everything. Creativity, for example. Have you ever tried to force an idea? Sat in front of a blank page and demanded that inspiration appear? The more you force it, the more your mind freezes. But when you stop trying, When you go for a walk, take a shower, do anything but think about the problem. That's when the idea finally comes, without warning, without effort. Alan Watts described it perfectly. He said that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. And we become so obsessed with solving, conquering, securing that we forget to live. We forget to feel, we forget to be present in the process. Because what the reverse law is telling you is this: the result is not the point, the result is a consequence. When you're obsessed with the destination, you miss the journey. And the journey is where life happens. The journey is where you grow, where you learn, where you truly live. But we don't want to accept that. We want to have control over when, how, and where things will happen. We want guarantees. We want to know that if we do X, we will get Y. And when life doesn't work that way, because it never works that way, we get frustrated. We feel betrayed. We think we're doing something wrong. But maybe that's the mistake, thinking that life works like a vending machine, that you put in the effort, press the button, and get the result. But life isn't mechanical. It's organic. It grows, it flows, it transforms. And you can't force a flower to bloom. You can only water it, give it light, and trust the process. And that's where the painful paradox lies. You do need to take action. You need to plant the seed, water it, care for it. But you also need to let go of the outcome. You need to do your part and trust that life will do its part. And that, my friend, is one of the hardest things there is. Because it requires faith. It requires trust. It requires you to let go of the illusion that you control time and the way things will happen. Think about how many times you've sabotaged something good because you were trying to make sure it stayed good. How many times have you ruined a moment of joy because your mind was already worried about how not to lose that joy? How many times have you stifled a possibility because you were trying to force it to fit into your perfect script? The reverse law shows you that there is a brutal paradox at the root of all this. The more you cling to something, the more you lose it. The more you try to hold on, the more it slips away. The more you demand certainty, the more uncertainty paralyzes you. It's like trying to hold water tightly. It slips away. But if you relax your hand, cup it, the water stays there, resting. And perhaps the most painful example of this is happiness. You spend your whole life chasing happiness as if it were a goal, a destination, a place where you will finally arrive. When I achieve this, I will be happy. When I have that, then I will be complete. But happiness doesn't work that way. It's not a prize at the end of the race. It's what happens when you stop running. Because happiness deep down is being present. It's being able to inhabit the moment without your mind already being on the next one. And how can you be present if you're always chasing what comes next? How can you enjoy where you are if you're obsessed with getting where you're not? The reverse law isn't telling you not to want things. It's telling you not to be held hostage by them. Yes, want. Yes, dream. But don't make the fulfillment of those dreams the only condition for your peace. Because if you do that, you are outsourcing your happiness to variables you don't control. And then you become a slave to circumstances, eternally dissatisfied, eternally lacking. But when you finally understand this, when you stop chasing and start attracting, something changes. You stop wearing yourself out. You stop swimming against the current, you start flowing. And suddenly things start coming your way. Not because you forced them, but because you made room for them. Because you stopped blocking the way with your own anxiety. And this is where things get even more interesting. Because Easterners thousands of years ago already knew this. They even had a name for this way of acting, Wu Wei. And no, it's not laziness. It's not giving up. It's something much more subtle, much more powerful. Wu Wei in Taoism is translated as non-action or effortless action. But this confuses people. They think it's about doing nothing, about sitting back and waiting for the universe to hand things to them on a silver platter. That's not it. Wu Wei is about acting, yes, but without forcing. It's about being in tune with the natural flow of things rather than fighting it. Imagine a river. Water doesn't try to flow. It just flows. It doesn't force its way through the rock, it goes around it. It doesn't fight the terrain, it adapts. And yet over time, it is water that shapes the rock, that carves the canyon, that transforms the landscape, not through brute force, but through gentle persistence, through constant adaptation. That is the essence of Wu Wei. You act, but without resistance. You pursue, but without desperation. You work, but without tension. It's like swimming with the current instead of against it. You're still swimming. You're not standing still, but you're using the force of the water to your advantage, instead of expending all your energy fighting against it. And that changes everything. Because when you act from this place of alignment, of flow, things start to happen in a way that seems almost magical. Opportunities appear. The right people cross your path. Solutions arise. Not because the universe is favoring you, but because you are no longer blocking the way with your own resistance. Let me give you a practical example. Think of that athlete who is in the zone, that state where everything flows, where every movement is perfect, where he doesn't have to think, he just acts. He's not trying any harder. He's actually performing at his best, but there's no tension. There's no doubt. There's no voice in his head saying, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up. He is present, aligned, flowing. Or think of a conversation that flows naturally. You're not planning every word. You're not trying hard to be interesting. You're not trying to control the impression you're making. You are present. You are listening. You are responding genuinely. And it is in this kind of conversation that real connections happen. Not in rehearsed, forced ones. In those that flow. This is Wu Wei. It is acting without the weight of anxiety about the outcome. It is doing without the tension of control. It is persisting without the rigidity of obsession. And here's the part that many people don't understand. Wu Wei is not about being passive. It's not about letting life take you in the sense of doing nothing. It's about knowing when to act and when to wait. It's about recognizing the right moment, the right action, the right effort. It's about having the wisdom to distinguish between persistence and stubbornness, between determination and obsession. Because there is a huge difference between someone who is rowing with the river and someone who is rowing against the river. Both are rowing, but one is getting further, with less effort, with less wear and tear. The other is exhausting themselves, creating friction, fighting against forces that are greater than themselves. And life gives you signs. It shows you when you're pushing too hard, when everything is difficult, when you feel like you're pushing against a wall, when every step seems to require twice the energy. These are signs that you may be rowing against the current. It doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It means that maybe you're approaching it the wrong way. Wu Wei teaches you to pay attention to these signs, to adjust your course, to change your approach, to let go of rigidity and move with more lightness, with more adaptability. And when you do that, you discover that you can get to the same places, sometimes even further, with much less struggle. But it takes practice. It requires you to unlearn the idea that effort always means tension, that hard work always means suffering, that pursuing your goals always means sacrificing your peace. Because it doesn't. You can be productive without being anxious. You can be ambitious without being desperate. You can want things without being held hostage by them. And perhaps that is the greatest gift of Wu Wei. It frees you from the prison of I need. I need to achieve this. I need to be that way. I need to prove that. When you act from the flow, you act because it is natural, because it is right, because it is aligned, not because you are trying to fill a void, prove a value, or avoid a fear. There is an ancient Taoist master who said, "The wise man acts without doing, teaches without speaking." It sounds enigmatic, but it's simple. He acts, but without that heavy burden of I need to make this happen. He teaches, but not by imposition, by force. He teaches by example, by living what he believes. That is Wu Wei in practice. And in your daily life, it's doing your job with excellence, but without being consumed by the need for recognition. It's dedicating yourself to a project, but without tying your entire identity to its success. It's loving someone, but without the desperate urgency to be loved back exactly the way you imagined. It's living with intention, but without rigidity. But I know what you're thinking right now. Okay, I get it. Accept what I can't control, stop obsessively pursuing, act without forcing. But what about when life really hurts? What about when I lose something I love? What about when things really fall apart? Do I just accept it and that's it? And look, that's the most honest question you can ask. Because it's one thing to philosophize about detachment when everything is fine. It's another thing to practice it when the ground disappears beneath your feet. And this is where we need to talk about something that many people confuse. Acceptance is not passivity. It's not conformity. It's not lying down and letting life run you over. Acceptance, in the Stoic sense, in the deep sense, is power. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who was also a Stoic philosopher, had a concept called amor fati, love of fate. And no, it's not about liking everything that happens. It's about accepting everything that happens. It's about looking at life, with its joys and tragedies, its gifts and losses, and saying, this is what it is and I'm going to work with it. Because the truth is, you have two choices when something bad happens. You can spend your energy fighting what has already happened, reliving the trauma, ruminating on the what-ifs, eating yourself up with it wasn't meant to be. Or you can accept that it happened, feel the pain completely, and then ask, what now? What do I do with this? How do I grow from this? The first option keeps you stuck in the past. In a fight you'll never win, because you can't change what's already been. The second frees you to act in the present, the only place where you really have power. And that's not easy, let me be very clear. Accepting is not easy. It's not quick. It's not a single decision you make and that's it. It's solved. It's a process. It's a daily practice. It's waking up every day and choosing again to let go of what you can't change and focus on what you can. Because there are things in life that are non-negotiable. There are losses that will happen, people who will leave, dreams that won't come true the way you imagined. You can fight against it until you're exhausted, or you can accept that it's part of life, that it's human, that it's real, and that even so, even with that, you can find meaning, you can find strength, you can find a way. Marcus Aurelius experienced this firsthand. He was the most powerful man in the world at the time, and yet he went through betrayals, wars, illnesses, family losses. He could have used all that power to try to control every aspect, to protect himself from everything, but he knew it didn't work that way. So he practiced acceptance, not as defeat, but as a survival strategy, as a way to maintain sanity, as a path to peace. And do you know what happens when you truly accept? When you stop fighting reality, you release an absurd amount of energy. Energy that was trapped in resistance, in "it shouldn't be this way," in "why me?" That energy comes back to you, and you can use it to build, to heal, to move forward. Accepting is not agreeing. You can accept that you lost your job without agreeing that it was fair. You can accept that the relationship is over without agreeing that it should have ended. You can accept that you are sick without agreeing that you deserve to be. Acceptance is simply recognizing what is, without adding layers of unnecessary suffering on top of the pain that already exists. Because look, the pain is already there. The loss has already happened. The disappointment is already real. You're not avoiding anything by resisting. You're just prolonging it. You're taking a wound, and instead of letting it heal, you keep poking at it every day, keeping it open, keeping it hurting. Acceptance is the act of stopping poking. It is allowing the wound to heal. And yes, it will leave a scar. But a scar is different from an open wound. A scar is proof that you survived, that you healed, that you are stronger than what hurt you. And there's more. When you accept what you can't change, you become available to change what you can. When you stop wasting energy fighting the past, you have energy to build the future. When you stop asking yourself, why did this happen? You can start asking, what do I do now? That is power. Not the power to control everything, but the power to choose how you respond to everything. And ultimately, that is the only freedom that no one can take away from you. The freedom to choose your attitude, your perspective, your reaction. No matter what happens on the outside, you always have that choice on the inside. There's an exercise that the Stoics did that can help you with this. They called it negative visualization. It's not about being pessimistic or attracting bad things. It's about mentally preparing yourself for possible losses, imagining difficult scenarios, not to torture yourself but to lessen the impact if they happen, and more importantly, to appreciate what you have now while you still have it. When you spend 5 minutes imagining what it would be like to lose someone you love, you're not cursing. You're reminding yourself that this person is temporary, that this time together is precious, that you can't take it for granted. And when you return to the present, you hug tighter, you speak more clearly, you love more intensely, because you remembered that nothing is permanent. And when you finally internalize this, when you truly understand that accepting is not losing, it is letting go, something profound changes. You stop being a hostage to circumstances. You stop needing everything to go right in order to be okay. You find a kind of stability that does not depend on anything external because it comes from within. It comes from the certainty that no matter what happens, you will cope. You've always handled it, and you always will. Now comes the part that may be the hardest to hear, but also the most liberating. You don't need a method. You don't need another step-by-step guide, another foolproof technique, another magic formula that promises to transform your life in 21 days. What you need is simple. And precisely because it's simple, it's scary. You need to start practicing detachment every day, in the little things, in the details that seem insignificant, but that build who you are. Because detachment is not a big decision you make once and that's it, it's solved. It's a series of small choices, repeated until they become natural. It starts with the simple act of taking a deep breath when someone irritates you instead of reacting right away. It's choosing not to review that email for the 10th time, trusting that it's good enough and sending it. It's allowing the conversation to flow without having to plan every response in your head. It's going to sleep even without having crossed everything off your list, accepting that tomorrow is another day. It's these small daily surrenders that gradually dismantle the armor of control, because you spend your whole life building that armor, brick by brick, believing it protects you. But in the end, you discover that it only imprisons you. And taking it off doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers, in moments, in choices. Think about the last time you let something go, for real. Not because you gave up, but because you understood that holding on no longer made sense. Maybe it was an argument you decided not to pursue. Maybe it was a plan you let go of when you realized you were forcing it. Maybe it was an expectation you finally released about someone. Remember how you felt afterward? Remember that relief, that lightness, that space that opened up? That's right. That's the taste of freedom. And you can have that every day in small doses if you start to recognize the moments when you're pushing too hard, controlling too much, demanding too much from yourself, from others, from life. And there's a practical tool that the Stoics used that can help you with that. At the end of the day, before going to sleep, do a mental review. Not to judge yourself, but to observe. Ask yourself, where did I try to control what was not in my hands today? Where did I force myself? Where could I have let go and didn't? It's not about blaming yourself. It's about getting to know yourself. It's about mapping out patterns, triggers, moments when you revert to the autopilot of control. And then ask yourself, what was within my control and did I do well? Where did I act with integrity? Where was I present? Because detachment isn't just about letting go. It's also about recognizing and celebrating what you can do, what you've done, your genuine effort, without tying it to a demand for perfect results. Another exercise. Choose an area of your life where you know you are pushing too hard. It could be a relationship, a project, a goal. Now imagine just for a moment what it would be like if you continued to act but without the tension, without the desperate urgency, without that voice in your head saying, it has to work, otherwise. What would it be like if you worked with the same dedication but without that knot in your stomach? What would it be like if you loved with the same intensity but without that need for guarantees? What would it be like if you pursued your dreams but without making them the only condition for your peace of mind? Visualize it. Feel it. Because that's the difference between acting out of fear and acting out of trust. And when you act from trust in yourself, in the process, in life, you're not trying less. You're trying better, with more clarity, with more lightness, with more real power. And here's the final secret, the last piece of the puzzle. You already have everything you need. You always have. What you lack is not more control, more effort, more strategy. What you lack is the courage to let go of what was never yours to hold. And when you do that, when you finally open your hands and let life flow through them instead of trying to imprison it, you discover that what you always wanted was not far away. It was here. It always has been. You just couldn't see it because your hands were too close to receive it. And then, when you finally let go, truly not just intellectually but viscerally, something extraordinary happens. It's not that everything magically works out. It's not that you'll never feel fear, anxiety, or the urge to control again. It's that you change your relationship with all of that. You stop being a hostage. You stop waking up every day with that pressure in your chest, that feeling that you need to guarantee, you need to hold on, you need to force. You discover that you can want things without being desperate for them, that you can love without clinging, that you can work without consuming yourself, that you can live without needing to be sure of everything. And then comes the real blessing of detachment. You finally breathe. For the first time in a long time, you take a deep breath and realize that you don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, that you never had to. That life isn't waiting for you to fail so it can collapse, that the universe isn't conspiring against you, that things will happen the way they happen and you'll be fine either way. Not because you control everything, but because you trust yourself to deal with whatever comes your way. You know that person you've always admired, who seems to have a peace you don't understand, who faces the same problems as everyone else but without that constant agony, who seems to be present, really present in the moment. It's not because their life is easier, it's because they've learned it. They've learned to let go. They've learned that control is an illusion and that true strength lies in accepting, adapting, flowing. And you can be that person, not overnight, not through a single transformative insight, but through small daily practices, small surrenders, small moments when you choose to trust instead of control, to be present instead of anticipate, to feel instead of avoid. Because ultimately, life is now, not when you achieve that, not when you're sure of it. Not when you're finally in control. Now, in this moment, in this breath. And if you spend your whole life chasing the next moment, trying to secure the future, you miss the only time that really exists, the present. The Stoics knew this, the Taoists knew this, the Buddhists knew this, and now you know it too. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Because knowledge without practice is just information. It's just one more thing in your head competing for attention. But if you take even one of these ideas, the dichotomy of control, the reverse law, Wu Wei, Amor Fati, and start living it truly in your daily life, everything changes. You begin to notice the moments when you are forcing yourself and choose to relax. You begin to recognize when you are fighting the uncontrollable and choose to accept it. You begin to feel when you are desperately chasing and choose to attract with presence. And little by little, day after day, you become someone different. Not because you added more things, but because you let go of what was never yours. And there is one last thing that needs to be said because it may be the most important of all. You are not alone in this. Everyone is struggling with this. Everyone wants to control, wants to guarantee, wants to be sure. It's human. It's part of it. The difference is that now you are aware of it. You have tools, you have a choice. And whenever you feel like you're falling back into the old pattern, and you will feel it because it's a process, not a destination, remember, control is prison. Letting go is the key. And you can always choose to open the door. So breathe, release your shoulders, relax your hands, and ask yourself, what am I holding on to right now that no longer needs to be held on to? It could be hurt. It could be an expectation. It could be a need to prove something. It could be the fear of not being enough. Whatever it is, feel where it lives in your body, and then gently let it go. Not because you're giving up, but because you're trusting. Trusting yourself, trusting the process, trusting that life in the end always finds a way. In the end, letting go is not losing. It's finally stopping carrying a weight that was never yours to carry. It's discovering that life flows better when you don't try to hold it with clenched hands. It's the blessing of, for the first time, taking a deep breath and trusting that you don't have to control everything to be okay. You never did. And now finally you know it. Not just in your head, in your body, in your soul, in the way you wake up, how you act, how you live. And that, my friend, is freedom. The only real freedom there is. The freedom to be yourself completely, without the heavy armor of control. The freedom to live fully, without the chain of needing guarantees. The freedom to love, to work, to dream. Not because you need to, but because you choose to. And in that choice, in that conscious surrender, you find everything you ever wanted. Not out there, in here, where it always was, waiting for you to let go so it can finally appear. So now I ask you, what are you holding on to so tightly that it is preventing you from flying? Write it here in the comments. It doesn't have to be perfect, just honest. It can be a word, a phrase, an outburst. What are you finally ready to let go of? If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You watch the videos. You reflect on each idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to go with this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the codes of the White Rabbit are ready for you. The link is in the video description. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.